Hello everybody, it's really good to see you. Welcome to Good Food for All, Averting a COVID-19 Hunger Crisis. This is a dialogue, it is interactive, it is a workshop as well. We are getting to solutions, not just talking about the challenges. So down here, down there, at the bottom of your Zoom screen, you will see Q&A. It is not there just to look pretty on your screen. It is there so that when you have questions or thoughts or comments about this conversation, you can be in the conversation as well. I am not going to silo you to the end. We will have that conversation all the way through, which is why it makes a dialogue. We are not going to be talking at you. What are we going to be talking about though? The impact of COVID-19 on food security, food nutrition, and the impact on what that may be doing to SDG2, Zero Hunger by 2030. My name is Femi Oke, I am your moderator. I have to start with a compliment for you, and that compliment is you could be virtually anywhere and you chose to be with us today, so thank you very much for that. So, we will be using simultaneous translation from English into French. This language that I am speaking right now is South London, so I do apologize for that. There is no interpretation for that. But this is how you work out simultaneous interpretation in Zoom. You click on interpretation at the bottom of the Zoom's interface. That's to start. Now, if you don't see that, that means that you may need to refresh your Zoom or get the latest version of it. Then a menu will pop up in the available language, which is French. And then you select the language that you would like to use. So that is how you do simultaneous translation or simultaneous interpretation, I should say. This conversation is online, and the bigger dialogue, the bigger conversation is also on social. So let me show you where we can find that on social. A couple of hashtags you will need to use. Good for all, hashtag good for all, hashtag end hunger. And then the Twitter handles of our co-hosts at Ceres2030 at SDG2 Advocacy Hub. So what are we going to be doing in the next 90 minutes? First of all, setting out using two presentations. What are the challenges? Where are we right now? COVID-19, food hunger, insecurity, nutrition, getting to SDG2, and then the second part I love, solutions. Not a panel about problems, a panel about solutions. So stay with us for that entire conversation. You are part of that conversation. We're not doing it for ourselves. The panel already know the answers, apparently. We are doing it for you. So you can be part of that conversation as well. I want to start though with a look at two presentations. One is very important. The other one is very important. They really kind of go hand in hand. So let's start with Maximo Torero. He's from FAO. Maximo, it's great to have you. Thanks for joining. Maximo, introduce yourself and then start your presentation.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here, Femi, and thank you very much for the invitation. I am Maximo Torero. I am the Chief Economist of the Food and Agriculture Organization, FAO. So let me do a little summary of the state of food insecurity and nutrition in the world, which is the SOFI publication. This year, the SOFI did several improvements. One was to improve the quality of the information behind for 13 countries. We also bring projections to 2030, which is really linked to the topic of the conference today. And we also bring a preliminary effort to estimate the effects of COVID-19 and try to understand what are the costs of affording healthy diets. And next, please. Next, so to summarize what we found. First, we found that with respect to the previous year, there is an increase in 10 million people going into chronic undernourishment, and 60 million people in the last 5 years. So instead of going in the correct trend, we're going in the opposite trend. Second, if we go beyond hunger and we look at real access to safe and nutritious and sufficient food, we found that 2 billion people cannot access to safe, nutritious, and sufficient food. Third, the world clearly is not on track to eradicate hunger, and if the numbers and the trend continues as it is today, it will go more than 840 million people by 2030. COVID-19 exacerbates even more the problem and brings between 83 to 132 million people, depending on the scenario, to the number of hungry in 2020. And finally, the world is not on track on all the other indicators of nutrition, especially the ones of overweight and obesity, which is increasing across all regions, and stunting. The only one which is going to achieve the WHO target is the exclusive breastfeeding. Next slide, please. We look into three different types of diets to be able to. We look to the three different types of diets to try to see if we can afford healthy diets. The energy sufficient diet, which meets the needs for short-term subsistence. The nutrition adequate diet, which meets the required levels of all essential nutrients. And the healthy diet, which includes all foods from several diversity of groups. When we do this, what we find is that in most of the countries, especially countries in sub-Saharan Africa, which is the dark red color here in this map, shows us between 75 to 100% of the people cannot access to these healthy diets. These healthy diets are 5 times more expensive than the diets that meet only the dietary energy needs. Not only that, only 57% can afford them in sub-Saharan Africa and South Asia. And if we look at protracted crisis countries, 86% cannot afford this type of diets. So in total, there are 3 billion people in the world which cannot afford healthy diets. And that's the major concern. So not only we're not on track in terms of the nourishment indicators, but we are also not on track in eliminating all forms of malnutrition. And healthy diets is the way to do that. But today, 3 billion people cannot afford healthy diets. Next, please. In this report, we also look at 2 different things, 2 different hidden costs, which normally are not looking too much. One hidden cost is the effect of health and the cost of health. So when we look at the cost of health because of not using or not consuming healthy diets, we are talking of around $1.3 trillion per year by 2030. And what this graph is showing is that this can be reduced between 97% or even more if we switch to any of the different types of healthy diets that we are showing in this graph. Now, it's important to mention here that we mentioned different types of diets: flexitarian, pescatarian, vegetarian, and vegan. But the vegetarian and the vegan diets are not considered healthy diets. We just brought them for information. But both of them don't comply with all the characteristics that a healthy diet has to have in place, as specified by WHO. The other hidden cost we look at is the cost of emissions. Next slide, please. And we look at the emissions, what we found is that today there is $1.7 trillion per year by 2030 of the cost of emissions. And switching to healthy diets will reduce those between 41 to 74%, depending on the type of diet we're looking. So shifting to healthy diets clearly increase sustainability considerations, and that's something that this report tries to bring up. So again, what we are showing now is that the switch to healthy diets also helps to reduce these 2 examples of hidden costs. There are more, like biodiversity, water, soils, but we are just focusing on 2, on emissions and on the cost of health and non-communicable diseases. Next slide, please. And what we can do, and that's one of the core issues behind this report, is trying to identify what we can do, and we have to do things at both the supply and the demand side. So on the supply side, we need to focus on policies and incentives towards nutrition-sensitive investment. Today, most of the incentives in the world are not aligned towards healthy diets. They are aligned more towards starchy foods, and that's something that we need to reassess. Second, we need to look at efficiency across the value chain by reducing losses, and that's a core element that we want to put, for example, how we can reduce losses and increase efficiency on the supply chain on fruits and vegetable and meats. We need also to improve international trade, but also intra-regional trade, which could open huge opportunities to provide access to food. And even when we do sensitive social protection programs, we need to make them nutrition sensitive. It's important not only to provide cash to buy food, but to give cash to provide food that is healthy for consumers, so put conditionalities. And on the demand side, we need to improve the behavior. We need to improve how consumers look at the information they have to be able to make proper decisions, so that we can switch to dietary patterns which are more healthy and environmentally safe. So several things that can be done at a very cost-effective way that we need to improve to be able to achieve the goal of 2030 and to do the switch to healthy diets. Thank you very much.
Maximo, thank you very much indeed. So we bring in now Karen Smaller. Karen, we could not have this conversation without you from Ceres2030. Please introduce yourself and then tell us what we need to know before we start the panel. Go ahead.
Thanks, Femi. Hi, everyone. I'm Karen Smaller. I'm with the International Institute for Sustainable Development, IISD, and part of the Ceres2030 project. And I'm here today along with my colleagues from Ceres2030, David Laborde from IFPRI and Jaron Porciello from Cornell University. We're a partnership of academics, economists, and civil society trying to accelerate progress towards the Sustainable Development Goals. We use economic modeling, machine learning, and we're working with the scientific journal Nature to build a stronger evidence base about what works. I'm today presenting a report that we released last week alongside the SOFI report, and it's based on the historical data and projections from the SOFI report that Maximo has just presented. And in our report, we estimate that the number of people in extreme poverty and hunger could rise by 95 million people this year. This could take us back to absolute levels not seen in almost 2 decades. And our results are based on a scenario where global economic growth will shrink by almost 5% this year, consistent with the IMF's predictions. Next slide. With this scenario, we find that it will cost an additional $10 billion in 2020 to prevent a COVID-19 hunger crisis. To put that into perspective, that's just over 1% of the 750 billion euro package that the EU agreed to last night. To calculate this number, we used a macroeconomic model developed by David Laborde and other colleagues at IFPRI. The model integrates epidemiological data from the London School of Hygiene and Tropical Medicine and household data from National Statistics and the World Bank's LSMS surveys. The allocation between domestic resources and external resources is calculated based on the level of donor contributions to domestic budgets, which is linked to the income per capita of the recipient countries. So the lower the income level, the higher the dependency on aid. And based on this, we found that half the total, $5 billion must come from donor governments as aid, with the rest provided by the countries themselves. These costs that you see here before you are on top of the public spending that had already been allocated before COVID-19. The additional money allocated is going to social protection programs targeting the people most affected by the pandemic. Thinking longer term and with the 2030 horizon ahead of us, we feel that social protection programs should just be one of the risk management strategies in a much larger portfolio of investments in agriculture, rural development, and sustainable food systems. Importantly, the additional spending could ensure that people's diets do not get worse this year. Next slide. Indeed, the first coping strategy for people who have lost their income is to maintain calorie intake, but to eat less healthy food, which is generally more expensive. As you can see from this graph, while the consumption of vegetable oils and sugar, a source of cheap but poor quality calories, has increased by 5% this year, the consumption of fish is down by 10%, and the consumption of fruits and vegetables is down by 9%. And this really confirms the problems highlighted by Maximo and the SOFI report on the current unaffordability of healthy diets. As the UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres said last month, unless immediate action is taken, it is increasingly clear that there is an impending global food emergency that could have long-term impacts on hundreds of millions of children and adults. He called on us and on the world for a focus on transforming food systems to achieve a more inclusive and sustainable world. I hope our conversation today contributes to finding those solutions, and thank you everyone for being with us.
Thank you very much, Karen. So this panel that is about to happen is about solutions. I'm looking forward to hearing those solutions. If you have pushback, if you have extra case histories to add to them, ideas, questions, here's the box right down here at the bottom of your Zoom screen, Q&A. You put your comments, your questions in there. Let me say hello to all of the panel. Panel, you may now mute yourself. You may now make yourself visible so we can see who you are. Let me greet His Excellency Kutera Noel Baktaka. He's the Minister of Agriculture for Livestock and Fisheries in Togo. Bonjour, bienvenue, Mr. Minister. Mr. Minister, would you just introduce yourself? Why are you important in this conversation?
Merci beaucoup, Madame Oké. Désolé pour le retard, un petit souci de connexion. Et merci aux organisateurs de nous associer à cette importante rencontre virtuelle pour parler de cet enjeu planétaire de l'insécurité alimentaire et nutritionnelle que vivent des millions de personnes. Le rapport Sophie de la FAO ne fait que rappeler à l'humanité, à nous tous, la conscience collective que nous devons formuler pour que la problématique de l'alimentation soit au cœur des enjeux et autour des dirigeants de prendre les mesures nécessaires. Il va sans dire que la situation de la crise liée à la pandémie, à la COVID-19 vient exacerber cette situation qui était déjà préoccupante et nous éloigne dangereusement de l'objectif fin zéro à l'horizon 2030 qui a été fixé et dans le cadre des différents agendas après que l'objectif de fin zéro 2025 a été jugé difficilement atteignable. À l'heure actuelle, la situation telle qu'elle est présentée nous interpelle sur deux enjeux. Les populations les plus vulnérables restent celles qui sont les plus affectées par cette crise alimentaire parce que avec la pandémie,
by the pandemic, because with the pandemic, the supply systems have been disrupted. Transfers that allow solidarities to give access to food markets to small producers have been deeply impacted.
Excuse-moi, Mr. Minister, thank you so much for your introduction. I'm going to come back to you for a little bit more. I want to introduce the rest of the panel first, if I may. And also, just to let you know, because I know you were busy and you've just joined us, that this panel will be conducted in English, if that is possible for you, so that all of the panelists are available and able to discuss back and forth with you. So thank you very much for that introduction. Really
thank you also. Thank you
all
also.
right.
Welcome.
Okay. Very good. We will come back to you, Mr. Minister. Really appreciate you. Agnes Calavata, hello. Tell everybody who you are, why you're important to this conversation.
Hi, Femi. My name is Agnes Kalibata. I'm the president of the Alliance for Green Revolution in Africa, AGRA, and the UN Secretary General's Special Envoy to the Food System Summit that will happen next year. A mouthful.
Good to have you. Dirk Schatzschneider. Welcome, Dirk. Tell everybody who you are. Why are you important in this conversation?
Hello, everybody from Berlin. Well, maybe I'm not an important, however, I'm Dirk Schatzschneider from the German Federal Ministry for Economic Cooperation and Development, where I serve as well as the Commissioner for the Special Initiative, One World, No Hunger. And I'm happy to be here. Thank you. I'm looking forward.
Happy to have you. Tano Atkinson, good to have you. Thank you for joining us. Tell everybody who you are.
Yeah, thank you very much. Thank you very much, Amy. And also thank you for invitation to join this discussion. My name is Tano Atkinson, permanent representative of Thailand to the United Nations agencies in Rome, FAO, WFP, and IFAD. And also, I just before the COVID pandemic, a few months at the end, in October, I was elected as the chairperson of the Committee on World Food Security, CFS. And why we get involved in these issues, food securities and nutrition, because the CFS, or the Committee on World Food Securities, is the foremost inclusive international and intergovernmental platform for all stakeholders to work together to ensure food security and nutrition. And that's why we do hope that we are the part of the solution. And today we will share how we can work together to make sure that we have a better solution for a better future. Thank you very much.
Oh, you're very welcome. Esther Penunia, good to have you here. Tell everybody, what do they need to know about you before we start our dialogue? Go ahead.
Yes, hello, Femi. Good evening to everyone. I'm Esther Penunia from the Philippines. I am the Secretary General of Asian Farmers Association for Sustainable Rural Development, or AFA for short. We have 20 national farmers organizations as members in 16 countries, with a combined membership of 13 million small-scale family farmers, women, men, youth, engaged in crops, livestock, herding, fisheries, forestry, and pastoralism. Nice to be here with you all today.
Good to have you. Elizabeth Mpofu, hello, welcome. Elizabeth, you know what I'm going to ask you? Tell everybody who you are.
My name is Elizabeth Mpofu. I'm a small-scale farmer, a woman farmer for that matter, and I'm also practicing agroecology, as well as a strong activist based in Zimbabwe. Currently, I'm also serving as the General Coordinator of La Via Campesina, which is a global peasant movement which gathers about 182 peasant organizations from 81 countries across the globe, representing more than 200 million of peasants, landless, indigenous people, and also the medium-sized farmers, including the migrants and also agricultural workers. Thank you, Femi.
You're so welcome, Elizabeth. Looking forward to hearing more from you. So Elizabeth is a farmer. There is a connection between Elizabeth and Girder Verberg. Girder Verberg will tell you what that is and also introduce herself to you for this panel discussion. Hello, Girder.
Thank you very much, and good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. I'm very happy to be here. I'm the coordinator of the Scaling Up Nutrition Movement, a movement in 61 member countries that is working on improved nutrition from the country level, bringing different departments together: health, agriculture, education, social protection, but also the different stakeholders. And I am in this conversation to discuss very concrete solutions. And why am I doing this? Because I think food and nutrition is the key and core for people and better solutions in the SDGs. And because I'm a farmer's daughter. Thanks.
So good to have you. All right, everybody. One question for one is a question from all of your different perspectives, wherever you happen to be around the world, what you bring to that question. So do not hesitate to be in the conversation. I will start though with Esther, because food producers are so vital. When you're looking at solutions for where we are now, with COVID-19 meaning more food insecurity, less nutrition for particular parts of the world, what are Asian farmers thinking that they can do to help us with that situation? Esther.
Thank you very much for your question, Femi. I think we can do a lot as family farmers in Asia. In Asia, we have 540 million family farms. 70% of the family farmers, small-scale family farmers, are in our continent, Asia Pacific. So what we want to say as in terms of providing solution is for everyone to have a transformation of the mindset that farmers are not just victims of COVID. Farmers are not just beneficiaries of any government or other NGO intervention, but family farmers are solution providers, and family farmers are frontliners in the work for food security, nutrition, and even making the climate better or cooler. No? So in terms of solutions, we would like to say that there must be, of course, Maximo said, must be policies towards nutrition sensitivity, investments for food supply chains, but who do you do it with? Do it with family farmers through their organizations and cooperatives. Production systems has to be sustainable, resilient, agroecological, integrated, diversified. Family farmers can do it through their organizations and cooperatives. Family farmers can also establish their own cooperatives and enterprises and can do sustainable processing, value addition, even trading and marketing and labeling of their organically grown products or safe products. Okay?
So Esther, I would say, so what? Why is this all not happening all over the world then? Why do we have a problem?
I think the problem is we need to be, the family farmers, especially the organizations and cooperatives, should be recognized, respected. They should be in the decision-making bodies or consultative decision-making bodies, and donors and governments has to invest directly with them, recognize them and invest directly with them, like financing their work so that they can upscale their work in integrated, diversified agroecological farming, in establishing or strengthening their cooperatives. I have very good examples right now. For example, IFAD is working directly with us, family farming organizations in Asia, to make our organizations be recognized by governments, and then can work with governments and partner with governments on some of things, like in high value chains. GAFSP, for example, is a funding facility that now recognizes producer organizations, and GAFSP is able to direct finance farmers organizations. In Bangladesh, for example, the farmer organization there was able to establish call centers during COVID time, thus responding to the needs of the family farmers for transportation, for communication, and for direct supply and buying of their produce.
Des achats directs des consommateurs de leurs produits.
English.
Girder, I want to come back to why you asked that question, because I understand that what you're thinking of in terms of solution is changing the way that we think.
Yes, for sure, because the Secretary General has reported on the investments on the Sustainable Development Goals. We're talking about Sustainable Development Goal number 2, impacting all the others today. And what he found, that is that governments are...
On s'est rendu compte que les gouvernements...
In the year 2001, the investment in food production was
publics ont été
of GDP. It has decreased to 0.28%. So food and nutrition, which is so tremendous and so tremendous importance, and is such a way of creating solutions also for other issues, health, the climate, etc. It is invested less and less, and this is something that needs to change. And for that reason, I have a question for the Minister of Togo, because I noticed that many ministers of agriculture, when they talk about producing food and taking care of food and nutrition security, they only focus on food security and they only talk calories. They don't talk healthy diets. They don't talk investment in healthy people that can create a wealthy and productive nation or society. How do we, Your Excellency, how do we and you change the mindset of so many of your colleagues, to not only on food security, staple crops, quantity, and calories, but to focus on the quality of food that can prevent direct and indirect costs until up to 97% according to Sophie, and can also reduce greenhouse gases up to 74%. So what is the problem here?
Merci beaucoup. Je pense que la question de la sécurité alimentaire nutritionnelle, effectivement, va au-delà de la disponibilité, telle que même la définition de la sécurité alimentaire le dit. Et au niveau du Togo, l'ensemble des actions menées dans le secteur agricole sont mises en œuvre dans un modèle de développement intégral communautaire. Tous nos projets de développement en milieu rural comprennent des dimensions infrastructures sanitaires, infrastructures d'éducation. Il y a à peine un mois, le gouvernement a fait adopter par le Parlement une loi sur les cantines scolaires pour assurer des aliments, des repas de qualité aux élèves.
The students and pupils right from the very early ages. And so this initiative is very important in terms of nutritional security with the Minister of Health. We work together on solutions in terms of quality of food, but also in terms of nutritional care within infrastructures and sanitary structures, which allows, for instance, the mayors of municipalities to get some food and nutritional support at their level. And for these investments within the agricultural development, have such a dimension that it facilitates access to food for the population, but also takes into account the nutritional dimension and food safety for the harmonious development of human beings, generally speaking.
I thank you very much for this, but I would like to insist once more. In the mindset of too many decision makers and policy advisors, they talk about food security. They don't think about the quality of food. How can you as a minister support this change of mindset within the government and within the government policy advisors and decision making? Because that is a solution for Esther, it's a solution for the Minister of Health, for all the people, and it will also include planetary health.
If you don't mind, I would like to come in and help the minister, because I also understand where he's coming from.
Okay. Tu peux compléter rapidement et puis Agnès, vous allez
Perhaps I can make a few comments and then you carry around. In fact, the reason
parce que justement la problématique du mindset doit se traduire d'abord dans la solution d'accès aux aliments. Et si on a adopté le programme, la loi sur les cantines scolaires, c'est d'avoir dans les communautés la culture d'une qualité nutritionnelle des aliments depuis le bas âge au niveau des écoles. Et quand je parle des interventions avec le ministère de la Santé, ce n'est pas tout simplement tant l'aliment, mais aussi c'est renforcer l'éducation nutritionnelle dans les formations sanitaires et au niveau de l'école, mais les programmes de développement qui intègrent aussi les volets santé, éducation, c'est davantage la pratique de la qualité nutritionnelle. Et nous avons un plan de contingence qui intègre l'éducation et la formation et la sensibilisation sur la qualité des aliments et les mets des aliments. Et dans le cadre de la COVID, par exemple, avec l'université de Kara, il y a un manuel qui vient d'être élaboré pour dire comment construire la résilience des populations avec une alimentation équilibrée, un niveau de vie sain qui va être diffusé pour qu'on comprenne qu'il n'y a pas que l'aliment en soi, il faut la qualité de la composition de l'aliment, il y a une hygiène de vie qu'il faut suivre et il y a l'environnement dans lequel tout ceci se passe qui est extrêmement important. Je pense qu'Agnès peut bien entendu compléter un certain nombre d'éléments sur la question de l'éducation nutritionnelle qui est très, très centrale dans la sécurité alimentaire. Merci,
All right,
Agnes.
I have a feeling that there could be a back and forth between Girder and the Minister for some time. Girder, you made your point. Mr. Minister, you took it where you wanted to go to, and we hear that there's a complex challenge for you. Agnes, why did you want to jump in and help the Minister out? Go ahead.
Yeah, because I've been a Minister of Agriculture myself, so I understand where he's coming from, and Girder has been in the ministry as well, so she knows what we are talking about.
She knows the trickiest question to ask, right? It's like, why don't you just change the way you do business? Go ahead, Agnes.
So these are wars between ministers now, but let me go to the defense of my fellow minister here. From an African perspective, I think, Girder, you need to think about the whole concept of an idea whose time has come. Even from a food perspective, you need to think about the graduation of food. So when we are talking about hunger, what I've learned from experience working with communities that are hungry, the bottom line is people need to fill those caloric needs. World Health, FAO tells us that we need 2,100 calories per day, right? When we started doing work in Rwanda, trying to move our country from starvation to food security, I found that we were at 1,700 calories per day. And you can feel it in the environment. And at that moment, all you care about is that people have enough calories. All you care about is that people have food on their table. Once you get there, Rwanda is now at 2,700 calories per capita. Once you get there, then you have the luxury to worry about, do I need meat, do I need milk, do I need whatever? And I've been telling people this, we really need to understand where countries that are starving are coming from and how they deal with food issues. And then at that moment of starvation, food, it's a luxury to think about all the things you're talking about.
All right, so Agnes, may I ask you
faster to that point?
All right, Agnes, can I ask you, is it a luxury to think about how do we avoid a COVID-19 hunger crisis? Because I'm just going to make sure we stay on track here, because these debates are old debates, right? Yeah. Old debates. What is not old is COVID-19. So I know that, and I've heard this before, and I've heard this from various UN agencies, turning a crisis into an opportunity. What do you do right now? This year, there are so many more people who are food insecure, have less nutrition because of COVID-19. What do you do, Agnes?
There are a number of things we could do. Oh, sorry, you're asking me or you're asking Esther?
I'm asking you, Agnes, because I need a solution from you before I move on. And then Esther, I see you. Agnes, go first.
Yeah, right now, the most important thing that we need to focus on is to ensure that farming communities, like Esther was saying, really have the means that they need to produce. We need to keep the agriculture sector up there. We need to keep communities thinking about how they access good inputs so that they can produce. We need to make sure that they produce, mostly because some of these communities that are affected by COVID-19 don't have other social safety nets. So that's number one. But we also need to ensure that the cost of food is really much more affordable than it as we go further into COVID, because so many people have lost jobs. So for these people that have lost jobs, it has to be that they can afford food. It has to be that supermarkets remain open. But more importantly, it has to be that our countries are putting in place mechanisms to continue supporting these communities to ensure that they can have some form of cash transfers that help them access money. So two things really: keep the farming communities producing, because that's their social safety net, but also that's the way you get food into the rest of the environment. Ensure that people that have lost jobs have access to some form of cash that allows to buy them to get food. Ensure that trade continues to happen, supply chains don't close. We have supply chains now that are constrained by border issues, and we've really been trying to work hard with countries to ensure that those supply chains stay open. So we keep them open, and hopefully this will go away, and then we start looking at longer term investments into the agriculture sector. But right now we need to focus on keeping people safe and ensuring that they have food on their table.
All right, I just want to let our panelists know who is listening, some of the people who are listening. Mariam Mayet is from the African Center for Biodiversity. You've got a question, Mariam, you know where to do it. put it in the Q&A box. Jeff Tansey curates the online open education resource for the Food Systems Academy. Thank you, Jeff, for being part of our dialogue. Willis Ocheng is from the Center for Rural Employment and Agriculture Transformation for Sustainability, all part of our conversation today. Esther, be brief, because Dirk is looking thoughtful and he's being patient and he needs to be in the conversation. Esther, go ahead.
Yes, because I was just inspired with what you said, Femi, about this crisis bringing an opportunity, because we have a story here right in our neighborhood. Now, because we have an all-women startup cooperative, indigenous peoples, okay, and they have been, they have a bumper harvest, but because of the COVID lockdown, they could not bring their product to the market. So what our neighborhood did was to establish linkage with them, open our open basketball court for a weekend market. And in our neighborhood, there is a person who works with the office of the vice president. So we helped the cooperative get a pass, a transportation pass, so that they could travel 2 hours from their farm to here in our home. And so because in our neighborhood, also someone who works with a national farmer organization and who is engaging the Department of Agriculture through the various Zoom, and he told this story about this farmers market in our neighborhood. So then the Department of Agriculture picked it up and then tried it in the biggest urban poor community in Metro Manila. And that is what we mean by empowering. That is what we mean by being inclusive. That is what we mean by transforming the mindset that family farmers, organizations, and cooperatives are solution providers, given the right policies that they will have, given the right policies that they will have support for the agriculture, agroecological approaches, given the right policies that they will have subsidies for processing and for packaging. We can help a lot. We can help a lot in food security and nutrition. Thank you.
We need to pick Dirk's brain. Dirk is sitting there very patiently. Dirk, I'm guessing from a German perspective, it has to be, and from where you are sitting in your role, a solution has to be policy driven. As we're talking about COVID-19 and food insecurity, less nutrition, what is Germany bringing to the table in terms of a solution? Go ahead and unmute yourself, Dirk. You look good. You will sound even better with the unmute off. There we go.
Okay.
Yes, Dirk.
So all about technical equipment. Thank you, Femi. I like your notion that you mentioned 2 minutes ago. If I quote, turning a crisis into an opportunity. Obviously, the political approach has to be to handle the current crisis, but to come out of this crisis, let's say, stronger than we went into the crisis. I mean, there's a famous buzzword, not everybody likes it, about Build Back Better. However, if you like it or not, I think it's very neat in a nutshell. What is the challenge? So we try to deal with COVID-19, but at the same time we have to invest our brains, how we strengthen the system as a whole. And I'm really curious, and that's why I'm a little bit quiet, because I'm learning from all the other contributions about what's going on the ground, since due to COVID-19 I have not yet been able to travel on the ground. I'm on my desk and I pick up all the experience I can. So,
Dirk, so Dirk, who do you want to ask a question to then?
I would basically ask those who are already for a while in that business. What is, from your point of view, the best contribution we can deliver?
What can Germany do? So you don't have a solution, but you're willing to have a solution suggested to you. Danuat, I feel this is your moment. Go ahead.
Thank you very much. After listening to Girder conversation with ministers, and also after that Agnes came in to help or to support ministers. Perhaps in terms of the solution, we can say that all of us are part of solution. So the solution is not only waiting for support and investment of the government only, because we as individuals, we are as national and global citizens and professionals. We can provide our
Tanawat.
Okay.
Yeah. Just pick up on the last sentence, Tanawat.
Okay.
Sorry, we lost you momentarily.
We can say that we are, as an individual, global and national citizens and professional, we are part of solutions. And if you recall that the previous during the launch of the high-level panel of experts, the global narrative report, we introduced the two.
Tanawat, just take a pause for a moment. Elizabeth, there's some noise on our webinar, and it is because of your microphone. Would you mind just muting your microphone, and then I'll come back to you so that then we can hear you and everyone clearly.
Thank you. I tried to raise my hand, but
yes, Elizabeth, just mute yourself for a moment, and then I'm going to come straight to you. But just mute it for the moment, and then I'll come straight to you. Okay. All right. Fantastic. Tanawat, please continue.
Thank you very much. I just would like to point out that when we introduced the global narrative report of the high-level panel of experts, we also introduced the two new concept of agencies and also sustainabilities for the framework of food security. When we are talking about the agencies, we are referring to the capacities of individuals or groups to make their own decisions about what food we eat, and also what food we produce, and also how that food is produced, and or processed and distributed. And that's why when we're talking about the transformation of the food system, as Maximo Torero mentioned earlier, if we want to reduce the cost of the nutritious food and increase affordability of food, the key measure of the 2 points that he raised is about policies and incentives. And also another one is about policy across food supply. That's why it will link to another issues that at the beginning, Girder already mentions, and also ministers and also Agnes responded to that point. It's about our government and also the national leaders are ultimately responsible for the country's policies or regulation to make sure that we can produce nutritious foods for all, to make sure that the government is really taking care of the issues of healthy food, healthy diet. Because we know that at the moment, in terms of the non-communicable diseases increasing all over the world, all the countries, the number of the obesities is increased year by year. And that's why, to make sure that the government acknowledge the issues, the government invest additional budget to make sure that we can address those issues together as an individual and also as the government.
I hear what you're saying, but this doesn't sound urgent. How is this urgent? COVID-19 is right now. How is what you suggested urgent?
Okay. Regarding the COVID-19, we know that. That's why right now all of the government are really emphasized on the social protection, because the most vulnerable people need help. And that's why the government really put their emphasis on those most needed groups or most vulnerable people that need support, which actually we need to set priorities, because we know that the government budget is limited. And that's why the most needed have to come first, or we need to give a priorities who need to get support. And then after, and also in terms of let's say, in terms of food supply, we also need to make sure that we really strengthen the local food system, the local food supply, because all the local people in the community, they still can produce, and also they can deliver food to their own communities. And that's why if we want to have a sustainable and resilient food system, we also have to ensure that the local people and local producers still working very well. Thank you very much.
I see Agnes leaning in, I see Girder leaning in, but Elizabeth, I need to hear your voice. So let me get to Elizabeth first of all. Elizabeth, this is important because what I want to make sure is that I'm not hearing the same old talking points, because COVID-19 is not anything that we've ever had to deal with quite like this on a global scale. So the most important practical solution you are bringing to the table is what, Elizabeth? You can unmute yourself.
Thank you,
show us your
Femi.
video. Yeah, go ahead.
Thank you, Femi. I'm also just making some additional points to what Esther was saying, but let me just bring this issue first and foremost. We are now talking much of putting more concentration on COVID-19, but the majority have been suffering. We've been suffering for ages and ages, and we are now hearing increase and not decrease in malnutrition, increase on hunger, and no decrease on hunger, but a lot of effort have been done. But now, as Lavia Kambasina, we are really working on agroecology, which we have really seen that this is the best solution maybe to address some of these issues. And looking at the COVID-19 itself, if we really want people to get more food and healthy food and to be able to get these nutritious foods, why should we really try to guarantee the rights of peasants? We know very well that the United Nations Declaration of the Rights of Peasants and other people working in the rural areas was adopted by the United Nations in 2018. But then why are we not really putting more effort on that, taking into consideration the issues of land, access to seeds, our own local traditional seeds, and also the conditions which we really need to feed the population should be very safe. And also what we think is the other urgent solution is also to defend the rights to nutritious food for all. By that I mean we really need to put more emphasis on how we want to produce our own food and not necessarily trying to put more concentration on industrial farming systems. So we should also try to work together even with our governments to see that we have policies which are put into place that protect the rights of people, the rights of the peasants, the way we really want to produce, and especially to access the local markets.
Elizabeth, I'm just thinking that the SOFI report, the Ceres2030 report, said that this was an emergency, that there is a shortfall of funding, that so many more millions of people will be hungry this year. What you're talking about seems like it's a long-term program. What happens this year?
Yeah, Femi, it's difficult for me right now to talk about the emergence. Yes, emergence, because there are huge amounts of money being put in place to address this. But who is benefiting from this huge amount of money? The rural poor, who are in the majority, where I am right now in Masvingo province in Zimbabwe. We are realizing that many people are suffering, although we know very well there are emergency funds which are being placed there. We are not really getting the enough support which we should get. We have disabled people whom we used to beg on the streets, but right now they are locked inside their homes and no one is really take in consideration of those. So I think, yes, emergence funds, yes, they are there, but why should we, why can we not also bring the rural poor, who are the majority, who are now being affected by the COVID? Right now, the markets, our informal markets are closed, and the people are cannot access the food as they used to do in the rural areas.
All right. Yeah. Elizabeth, I hear you, and I think that is important that you remind us of that. Esther, I see that you want to respond. May I bring in our audience as well, because they are participating in this conversation. Esther, do not forget what you were about to say, because I want to bring in our audience too. This is from Willis. Hi, Willis. Thank you so much. Willis Ochieng is from the Center for Rural Employment and Agriculture Transformation for Sustainability. This is for our Honourable Minister. Honourable Minister, put your video on, put your microphone on, so you are standing by for this question. Mr. Minister, your country is one of the signatories to the Malabo Declaration that promises to increase budgetary allocation to agriculture at least 10% of the national budget. This would, in effect, impact household food security and nutrition. However, Togo is behind on this effort. How are you addressing this shortfall? Honourable Minister, go ahead.
Merci. Le Togo est le deuxième pays à avoir signé son
Togo is the second country to have signed the compact in 2009, which reactivated the process of the PDDA in Africa. And before the compact that was signed on the 31st of July 2009, there was less than 2% that was invested, of the budget that was invested into agriculture. The situation evolved to 11% in 2011, and now we've fallen below 6%. But globally, the agricultural budget has been timed by over 10 years, so that the agricultural sector has been the main contributor to the creation of wealth, but it has allowed Togo in 2013 and 15 to be commended by FAO for its effort to reduce food safety and security by reducing the prevalence of undernutrition from 32 to 16 and 11%. Investments are more massive in 2020 because with the effect of the pandemic, the government decided to orient its major action on the agricultural sector to reduce the impact, mitigate the impact, and prevent the rural populations to be most affected. This is what we have to say on this issue. We are very much engaged in the PDDA, and although we have not reached the 10% of the budget currently, it's the quality of our investment that is commendable, and the reduction of the food insecurity and the improvement of the income of small family producers. And let me also talk about something else. When we mentioned the way to organize small producers, Togo has chosen development model with cooperative. Last year, exceptionally, we was able to set up 15 federation of corporations and bring together these small producers within short circuits so that they can work together. So that today we have solutions, and I would like to agree in passing Agnes, who gave us help in reinforcing the advisory to these small producers with contracts and programs to define the partnership framework for the various stakeholders so that we can reinforce the food safety system for them.
All right, thank you, Honourable Minister. I appreciate that. Esther, hopefully you haven't forgotten what you were about to say. Go ahead.
Yes, I'm very glad that I'm speaking after the after the minister, because that's exactly our point. When Tana said there should be agency, there should be promotion of local food system, and Elizabeth was telling about the rights and the role of the peasants, that is exactly the kind of urgent action that we need during COVID-19. You see, family farmers are still producing. They're still working on their farms because they can do social distancing in their farms. Okay? But the poor, especially in the urban cities, they need the food that is coming from the rural areas. So what can we do? Please, for government, all the policies and the support so that farmers can continue to produce, like open and make free the market for the supply chain for seeds, for fertilizers, for whatever the farmers need for production, even loans, and then ease the transportation, and then really build the agency of family farmers, the organizations, the cooperatives, help them to link, for example, with the urban poor associations or with the associations, consumer associations in the cities. So there can be linkage in terms of production and marketing of supply. So agency, and also maybe one policy that we saw was very effective here in the Philippines is public procurement. So government was buying the fish of the fishermen. They could not go to the market. They bought the fish or they bought the vegetables and then gave them as emergency food packs to the hungry people in the city.
Femi, do you allow me to come in, because
always got it. Go ahead.
I very much understand what Esther and Elizabeth are talking about. So many smallholder farmers are in an emergency every day, and they, of course, they want to recognize the special situation in COVID, but they are experiencing this from day to day. We are working with 61 member countries, and Togo is one of our countries, Your Excellency. So I'll come back to you bilateral after this meeting to continue the conversation. But I would like to make a few remarks. We have worked with our countries on country situation papers. And what countries are learning from each other, that food and nutrition need to be in the top emergency room. So wherever the government is taking measures to respond to the crisis, of course the focus needs to be health, but always on health, but always also on food and nutrition and how to secure this. The other thing that is very often left out is to prevent disruption. Disruption for farmers to reach the markets, to sell their products. Disruption between for delivery of new starting material for the next harvest for farmers, etc. How others would they take care of the food and nutrition security for the next phase of this? So there are a lot of things that need to be taken into account. And I am very happy that this idea in many emergency rooms is graduating, as you learned me, Agnes. It is getting there. Secondly, during the emergency phase, every department needs to think about the recovery. Now we are in a crisis, but the system is broken. How do we build back better? And there I want to also say something to Dirk, what governments can do, like the German government and other donor governments. Whatever is happening, people are suffering from the impact of COVID-19, be it the health or the income or nutrition, etc. Use innovative approaches, and Germany will host the replenishment of the GovSP, a global initiative on food and nutrition security. Please make sure that the whole replenishment is focusing on building back better and bringing a systems approach together. What do we mean by a system approach? And there I'm also back to what Agnes is doing. Agnes is the special envoy on Food Systems Summit hosted by the Secretary General of the UN. I think food and nutrition is the key solution for health, but also for the climate. And now globally, we're all talking in our own silos, but by bringing the issues together to sit around the table at country level, at community level, and to see what you can bring to the table to improve health, to improve food and nutrition, to improve the climate, you can create win-wins and really build back better. So these are the things that we are learning from our countries, and we are organizing webinars on this, and they are all, and participants are eager to learn from each other, because you're not told by the global level what to do at country level. You want to learn from fellow countries and people going through the same experience as you do. But let's foster and celebrate our smallholder and family farmers, because they need to be front and center in any solution.
I'm going to go to Dirk first and then Agnes. And Agnes, I'm going to come to you second, because I have a question specifically for you from our audience. So Agnes, just be patient for one moment so I can just bring Dirk back in. Dirk, go ahead. I know you came here to listen rather than to talk, but I'm really interested to say what you have to say in response to Girder. Go ahead.
Yeah, I'm happy for your support, Girder. I mean, the idea of Build Back Better, I tried to elaborate in my first intervention. And obviously, this is a huge task, and we are happy to have, at the moment, also the EU Council's presidency, as you all noted at the news last night. They fixed the multi-annual budget framework at the summit in Brussels, which means that at least parts of the necessary funding that Maximo was talking about, the current, could be expected coming from Europe, also from Germany, of course. And thank you as well for mentioning the GAFSP Replenishment that we will probably host as BMZ together with GAFSP on October 8th. And let's say all that have a stake in that will receive invitations soon. And let's say on a second level, we are expecting to have a high-level SDG2 meeting some days later after the GAFSP, and this will obviously deal with the immediate needs of COVID-19. And maybe my last remark here, what makes it difficult at the moment to present easy and quick solutions is the assessment. We know we have a challenge by COVID-19, but we not really know all the hotspots that we can expect. We know certain focus groups as the rural poor that Esther have been talking about, and Elizabeth, that we know, but we expect more hotspots to develop, let's say when the next harvest will not have the same volume as usual, but we don't not know yet where will be the real hotspots and focuses, and that's why we have to be in good exchange with all of you, because you pick up on the ground the assessments we need to act on the political level. Thank you.
Dirk, I have a question for you from the audience. It's a political question and it's a little bit tricky, but I'm going to ask you anyway because you're in a good position to answer it. All right, so hold tight for this one. This is from Jeff Tansey. Jeff, this is a very difficult question. Jeff references something that is happening in the UK right now. And Jeff works for the Food Systems Academy. He's a member of the UK Food Ethics Council. So what has happened in the UK quite recently, and I'm not asking you to talk about UK politics, there's a takeaway from here, Dirk, I think you may well be able to help with. The DFID, which is the aid agency, the aid arm of the UK government, has now been merged with the Foreign Service. There have been multiple concerns about what does this mean? How can the Foreign Ministry and the aid agency be working together? I am not expecting you to answer that one, Dirk, but this is what Jeff asks. Do you have any advice about what groups concerned about this in the UK should press for so government keeps focus on those in need and ending hunger? And what action can you and other governments and international agencies take to press the UK government about this? So this is relevant to every government. How do you keep them focused on aid, on getting to SDG2, for instance, on this current COVID-19 crisis and health crisis? what would be your advice, Dirk, from where you're sitting?
Well, obviously, we are always in a good, close contact with our British colleagues. I cannot comment on the, let's say, highly political questions, as you've already mentioned, Femi, because I'm not a political guy. But there are a lot of examples where, let's say, the development cooperation and aid departments are part of the Foreign Office, or where they merged into the Foreign Office. I think just recently the Canadians did that. That's a question of organization. You can handle that. But obviously, we will stay in touch, whatever organizational structure our British colleagues will have, and try to keep them on track. Unfortunately, we cannot use our current position as EU presidency anymore, because they don't belong to the club anymore. But
yeah.
Nevertheless,
sorry, that's my inner pain screaming out, and I'm sorry, I shouldn't really editorialize. Please continue, Dirk. I was fine until you mentioned that.
I wanted to say we will keep we'll try to keep our British friends on track. We will hold their hand.
Because Dirk, isn't the point? It's people in need should be beyond politics. And this is our problem around the world, not just in one particular country, but beyond politics. What do we have to do? How do we keep on track for 2030? How do we help with COVID-19 and food insecurity, etc.? So I'm thinking beyond politics, which is what I wanted you to focus on.
Well, I think we have a lot of, let's say, very, very involved and highly engaged people in all the structures that are represented here on the panel. And I think civil society is important to keep up pressure on the political level and keeping them on track, besides being involved, let's say, on the personal level, of course. But pressure groups from civil society organizations are very helpful and extremely useful for us. And we would, in any case, and every day encourage them to keep pushing.
Yeah.
Let me add my voice there for one sentence. It doesn't go without politics. Politics is everywhere. But push your representatives, I say to the gentleman in the UK, push your representatives to hold up this development cooperation, because you have a strong reputation there to defend. To people in Africa and in other countries, I say, hold your politicians to account. Make it part of the elections, because that is where they need to prove that they have been accountable to their people, to their society. Thanks.
Agnes, I know you've got so much on your mind. I'm going to let you get that out, and then I have a question for you as well. Articulate your thoughts, and then let me know when you're done.
Good, thank you so much. I wanted to go back to a few issues that were raised. First of all, I wanted to go back to the COVID situation and question you were raising, what needs to be done. One of the things we are not talking about here is the whole debt crisis that has happened to countries since COVID happened. That is going to make it so difficult for these countries, even as we ask them and try to hold them to be accountable to investing in the agriculture sector. But we know that these countries are going to be prioritizing investing in health versus investing in agriculture. So I just wanted to bring that out. I know, for example, that the Minister of Togo, who is speaking, has been looking for opportunities to take inputs to his farmers, but he has no budget to be able to do that. He's been struggling because he does understand that with these good rains, he probably needs to take advantage and make sure that farmers produce the most. But he doesn't have the resources because they're extremely constrained. This is going to haunt us for some time. And I think, Dirk, as we go into some of these replenishments, like with the GAPSIP, which I completely really want to commend your government for doing. The leadership you've provided there has been amazing. Helping some of these countries that are currently choked from an agricultural sector perspective will be really critical to preventing a food crisis following up to a COVID crisis. I wanted to go back to where the next hotspot will come from. It will not come from a physical hotspot. It will come from an SME failure. We have seen so many SMEs that have failed because of lack of access to finance. And these SMEs handle 80% of the food that we eat away from the farm. So the SME failure is going to be the next crisis that will impact the food crisis, rather than an actual physical food crisis.
Agnes, I'm going to get you to answer this question now, because this is really important here. It would be great if Agnes, this is for Mariam Mayet. Hi there, Mariam. Thank you for being part of our conversation. Mariam is from the African Center for Biodiversity in South Africa. It would be great if Agnes could tell us more about the Food Systems Summit. Which countries are supporting it? What is this intending to accomplish? Agnes, if I may do this briefly, because we are now in the last 12 minutes of our conversation. Go ahead.
So thank you so much for giving me that opportunity. The Food Systems Summit is recognizing the very reason we are here talking about all these things, that we are off track in a number of SDGs, but including SDG 2, of course, which we are discussing here. So it was launched last year by the Secretary General, recognizing that fact that we are off track and really asking us as a community, as a people, to go back into ourselves and look at the opportunity that actually the food systems itself might be able to offer opportunities for solutions to the challenges we are facing. But we have to explore those, we have to engage, and we have put in place mechanisms to help us do that. So there's a group of scientists that is going to be working on that. We are going to be carrying out country dialogues. We are going to be engaging communities all over the world. Esther is a member of the advisory committee of the Food Systems Summit, so she advises me on how to do this. Girder is a member of the advisory committee. So what we are trying to do here is to make sure that we engage the whole community, the whole world.
Hi, Berta. This is Mark Froman speaking.
Okay. Mark, we hear you. Mark, we hear you.
Thank you.
Mute. Mark,
in the background, you.
Okay. Everybody, I'm sorry about this. Mark is interrupting us. Mark, we need you to mute your microphone so that you are not interrupting our conversation. Agnes, I do apologize about that. Yeah. Thank you. If I may wrap you up, if I may, because I've only got 10 minutes left. All right, I'll come back to you.
So I'm going to really just nail it down to the Food Systems Summit is going to happen next year. It's going to be a global engagement. We are going to engage each and everybody. We are putting in place mechanisms to help you engage with each and everybody. We are working with FAO. Maximo is the center producing the science of the Food Systems Summit. We will come back to all of you. We are setting up a global campaign. We are setting up tracks that are going to be the centers through which we actually come up with game-changing ideas around the Food Systems Summit. All countries are involved, and we will need support from all countries to be able to deliver this. We will do food systems dialogue at country level. So this is a global engagement. All countries are involved. All countries are supporting it. And I just want to welcome you to be part of it, even you, Femi.
Agnes is using her platform. Agnes, thank you. Have a rest. Okay. Let me just remind everybody, what are we doing here? We've already spent 90 minutes doing this. Good food for all, averting a COVID-19 hunger crisis. Panelists, audience, you need to remember that. That is what we're doing here. We're not talking about old debates. We're talking about a fresh crisis. And then how do we get to 2030 with SDG 2 without it being off track? It was already off track before COVID-19. All right, I'm reminding you this because we want to use these next 10 minutes well. So I am thinking about your solutions, which you addressed, some of them, concrete action, and then next steps. If what you're thinking does not fit into that, do not say it, all right? Tanawat, you've been very thoughtful. You've been leaning forward. You've even been making notes, I believe.
Yep.
Go ahead.
Yep. Thank you very much. As all of you mentioned that, and also now all of you are leading your organization, your groups, and we learned that. We listened to all of you that now we are demanding specific systematic changes of our government, of our leaders, of our business producers, and also all the professionals to bring better the global food system And that's why we have to ensure that you and all of us are the part of solutions. And also as a CFS is also a part of the solution. And that's why these years, now we are working on the voluntary guideline on food system and nutrition, and also policy recommendation on agroecological and other innovative approach. And we do hope that the CFS product will also shape the discussion of the food system summit, and also we can learn from the current situation, we can learn from our mistake and our failure during the COVID-19 pandemic. And now it's a time to share our experience. It's a time to learn from each other how to prevent the next food crisis or any other pandemic that may occur in the future. And that's why we call for your support. We call for your commitment. We need a strong commitment of all members of the government or private sector, civil societies, to make sure that we can shape a better food system, more sustainable and resilient. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Tanawa. I really like what Temba is saying. Temba is part of the conversation, part of the audience. Temba, thank you. Temba says the solution is not just to pump money as the urgent relief only, but to look forward, okay? We are 4 months into COVID-19, depending on where you are, it's even longer. And more money has to be injected into COVID-19, like food parcels, relief grants, unemployment, money into businesses, other sectors, etc. But Temba says what is lacking and needs to be done is an urgent solution. What is lacking? What are we not thinking about right now? What should we be encouraging people to do? That to me sounds like a really excellent way to wrap up our conversation. Now, because we have 7 people, 7 great brains in this conversation, I am only giving you 30 seconds to come up with what is the... Tanawat's face is making me laugh. Tanawat's face is, are you kidding me? Yeah, I mean, not for the entire solution, but a thought, Tanawat, okay? I know you would need probably a whole week, but we don't have a webinar, a week-long webinar, okay. But a thought, okay? And we'll start with Tanawat, and I'll go around everybody. And the reason I'm saying that is because we are going to be finished in 7 minutes' time. So there is no time for speeches. Tanawat, emergent, what needs to be done?
Very short.
Yeah, go ahead.
Just do it now. Do it now, because I think we have all the policies, we have all the commitment, we have all the political view. You just only do it now to make sure that we can make change and we can transform our food system, and also to prevent any food crisis that may happen. Thank you very much.
Good. Elizabeth, what is lacking and needs to be done as an urgent solution is what Temba asked. It's a good closing question. Elizabeth, I'm giving you 30 seconds to answer that. Go ahead. Elizabeth has given back her 30 seconds. Elizabeth, are you still with us? Let me just see. Elizabeth, you have muted yourself. I will still give you back your 30 seconds. There you go. Start again. Elizabeth, we do not hear you. Let's try one more time. Elizabeth, you're muted. Unmute yourself. Okay. I don't think that's Elizabeth muting herself. I think we may have muted her. Elizabeth, I'm so sorry. I do apologize. We come back. Team behind the scenes, if you have muted Elizabeth, unmute her. Let me know when that happens and we'll come back to you. Elizabeth, hold tight for a moment. Sorry about that. Slight technical hitch. As we're almost finished, Esther, you know what I'm going to ask you? Go ahead. What is lacking?
I think what is lacking is really in all these responses is to really empower the citizenry that they can respond well to COVID-19. And for family farmers, that means we can continue to produce food and we can distribute, process, and market this food to where food is needed. So that's why policies that directly finance farmers' organizations' work towards food production, processing, distribution, and marketing is key. So thanks to GAFSP, for example, for doing this, thanks to IFAD for doing this, and this is our call to donor governments, directly finance family farming organizations in their work for food security, for nutrition, especially during COVID-19.
Thank you so much, Esther. Elizabeth, your sound is back. I'm giving you 30 seconds back. What is lacking as an emergency solution? And your response is what, Elizabeth?
Thank you, Femi. What I was saying was that we really need the finance to really reach the family farmers so that they can also have this irrigation, access to irrigation facilities, because this is COVID-19 going together with the climate crisis. Thank you, Femi.
We really appreciate you, and I especially appreciate your brevity. Dirk, go ahead. Great question from Temba. What is lacking as an emergency solution?
Well, my final remark would be that we have to act now. We have to use the tools we have at hand. We have to use the money we have at hand. We cannot develop new tools because we don't have time. But we have to take the time to make a good assessment how we mix the tools we have at hand and how we use the resources we have available. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you for joining us. Agnes, go ahead.
Thank you. There's so much need on the ground. Just being able, for people who have the resources, being able to mobilize resources and support the people that need them. Because again, let's not come in to deal with the hunger situation if we can avoid the situation from happening in the first place. So let's support those communities with what they need so that they can produce. And then let's of course be part of the Food System Summit, because we are looking at a longer term solution for food system problem.
Agnes, I really appreciate you. Thank you. And to our sparring partners that started off our debate at the very beginning, Honourable Minister, I am looking for 30 seconds only. What is lacking as an emergency solution? Please unmute yourself. Show us in your video. Go ahead, Minister.
Merci beaucoup pour cette opportunité qui nous permet de renforcer le plaidoyer vis-à-vis des partenaires. Il faut agir. Il nous faut agir maintenant, sinon après, il sera trop tard. Construisons des chaînes de valeur.
Build some value chains that will reinforce the link with small producers, family farmers, to guarantee that they have outlets for their production through local SMEs that will create opportunities for work and money and income for the local population, because and training as well, because we need to have training for these people to find jobs. And in the agro-feed processing SMEs, we can generate employment, add value to the production, and develop the distribution systems for local suppliers to be sure that we have quality food available locally to protect the food safety and security and add value at the same time, and create outlets for small producers who also need cash for their own system beyond the calories that they need to provide.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Merci beaucoup. Girder.
Thank you very much. First of all, put yourself in the shoes of a family out there, community, livelihood, farmer, but also in cities, and think about their needs and then support them from where you are. My second point is, have always a notebook in your pocket or in your bag to take notes of where you see that a current system is broken, in order to fix it or renew it once you are in the recovery phase, in order to build back better. Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you very much to all our speakers, our panelists. It is not easy having a conversation that's live with 7 other people and me moderating them, but we did it. Audience, excellent questions. Thank you so much. Remember, when you go online, this conversation is not over. Good food for all. That's the hashtag. Continue to have it. And when you exit this webinar, there will be a survey. Please take the survey. So let me just tell you that this webinar was brought to you by Ceres2030 and the SDG2 Advocacy Hub. Thank you to the co-hosts. Thank you for being here. My name is Femi OK. Enjoy the rest of your day. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.
Thank you very much.
Thank you and bye-bye.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Everyone.